May I now invite our next speaker, Dr. Tanvi Gautam.
A very good morning to everyone here. I'm absolutely delighted to be here at this historic conference where we have crossed over 1,000 delegates. I'd like to congratulate the organizing committee for inviting me and making this such a successful conference. So as I was boarding my plane to come to Kochi, the lady at the check-in, she noticed my credentials and she got quite impressed. And so suddenly from another passenger, I became Dr. Tanvi. So Dr. Tanvi, would you like the aisle seat or the window seat? Dr. Tanvi, what's your meal option? Dr. Tanvi, Dr. And that felt really nice because in my classroom, where I have mostly Gen Y, especially in the US, they sometimes refer to me by my first name. So, I was also lapping it all up and feeling very important in life. And suddenly she looked up at me and said, well, what's your specialization, ma'am? Are you like a dermatologist, a cardiologist? And I said, no, actually I've just done my PhD. I'm an HR professional. And she stopped doing what she did. She looked up and said, oh, okay. So she tried her best to hide her disappointment, but I was quite upset because this is not fair, I said. I think that we HR professionals have it more difficult than the medical doctors. If a doctor prescribes you a pill, the patient goes home and takes it. How many people in Gen Y do what you tell them to? Not many. If a doctor gives a pill for a headache, whether you're in Chennai or you're in China or you're in Chicago, that headache pill works. But if I have an HR practice, I must tweak it for each generation, for each location, for each client. And most of all, don't you think the doctors have it easy? They have found the cure for polio, they found the cure for malaria, but we HR professionals have the same vexing problem we've been working for the past 100 years. What motivates people? How do we get them to contribute the best? So I really felt that it was unfair, but you are HR professionals, you understand my pain. And as I was thinking about, why is it that, this problem of what motivates people, how do we get them to contribute our best? I remember the story about Albert Einstein. And as Albert Einstein was conducting an examination, one of his students came to him to complain. And he said, well, if he was Gen Y, he would have said Einstein. But at that time, he said, Professor, there's a problem in the paper. He said, what's the problem? He said, the questions in this exam paper are the same as the ones they were last year. And Einstein, being Einstein, said, that's not a mistake. The questions are the same as last year. The answers have changed this year. And that, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is at the heart of this idea of innovation in talent management. The question that we are asking is the same question that our seniors asked before us and their seniors asked before them. But the way we answer those questions is what leads to innovation in talent management. And you had heard two different speakers who've given you examples of how they have done it. In my session, I want to share with you the principles that I have extracted on how you can do it. Because it doesn't matter what an Apple has done and what a Google has done and what a Procter & Gamble has done, but what matters is what are you going to do after you go back from this conference and you decide to innovate. Right? So I would like to begin by doing a little fun exercise. It's not very analytical. Just respond from your gut. Don't think about it too much. We are going to decide that you have the vote to choose the world's next political leader. And yours is the only vote that counts. And I'm going to give you some information and you have to choose who you're going to elect. So the first candidate, candidate A, associates with crooked politicians, consults astrologers, has 8 to 12 martinis in a day, chain smokes, has had 2 extramarital affairs. I'm sorry, these are politicians. Candidate B has been kicked out of political office twice, sleeps till noon, used opium in college, drinks a quart of whiskey every evening. It's not getting any better. Candidate C, now he's a decorated war hero, he's a vegetarian, he never smokes, occasionally drinks, and he's never cheated on his wife. So how many people will vote for candidate A? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have 2 people, not bad. 3, 4. How many for candidate B? Okay, same, equal running. How many for candidate C? Lots of them. Looks like candidate C is a clear winner, ladies and gentlemen. And I had chosen candidate C as well when I was given this choice. Let me share with you who we are talking about. Where are the choices? Candidate A is Franklin Roosevelt. Candidate B is Winston Churchill. And our collective choice, ladies and gentlemen, together you and I have elected Why am I sharing this story with you? The reason is that we all have what is called mental models about what leaders should look like. So what if Hitler killed a lot of people? He was a vegetarian. He didn't want to hurt animals, and that's important to us. So we need to think about the mental models that we have about what we believe talent looks like, what we think work looks like, how we think work ought to be done. And the innovation in talent management lies in going beyond these mental models, because sometimes we are not even aware that we have these mental models. These are subconscious ideas. So what is innovation? Innovation is a novel approach to problem solving. Innovation lies not in seeing new lands, but in seeing the current landscape with new eyes. They are still the same people. But when you change the way you look at something, the thing that you look at changes. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. When I work with companies to help them transition into the new HR practices, there are 3 signs that I see when I know that innovation is long overdue in this company. What are those 3 signs? The first is the belief that the role of HR is to manage talent within the organization. Now you might say, well, that's kind of strange. What isn't the role of HR to manage talent within the organization? Yes, it is. But consider this. Over 50% of new ideas for future products and services will flow in from outside the organization. We heard Mr. Dubey talk about co-creation this morning. He talked about the relationship with vendors, with clients, with a larger community. HR has to recast the mental model of managing talent within the organization and figure out how they are going to be engaging talent from outside the organization. To give an example, IBM, as you all know, has very innovative HR practices, and IBM held this 72-hour tech jam online with over 1 lakh individuals on at the same time. Employees, their families, the customers, clients, vendors, trying to figure out what are the things that IBM can do to enable smart data analytics to create what they call smart cities. So it's very important for us to look outside the organization as well. Let's also talk briefly about social media. You cannot talk about innovation today without talking about social media. Globally, companies stand to gain between $900 billion to $1.3 trillion in value from social media. This is not a Gen Y concept, ladies and gentlemen. If you're wanting to impact bottom line, you need to engage with social media. It's not about the new age people. It is where the reality of business lies. And at the end of the day, if HR wants to be relevant for business, it must start understanding how social technologies are changing the future. And social media doesn't just mean getting on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. Organizations have started using social media within the firm as well to increase collaboration, to increase communication. Therefore, talent is not just within the boundaries of the firm. Sign number 2, organization chart is king, hierarchy is sacred. When I ask an organization, can you tell me who are your most valuable people? And they very enthusiastically pull out an organization chart, that's when I know there is time for something to change. Because talent doesn't just lie on an organization chart. Talent lies in the informal networks of influence, communication, and collaboration. I want you to look at this organization chart carefully. I want you to look at the blue arrow, which is the Senior Vice President, Mr. Mayers, and then look at Michelle, who I think is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers down in the hierarchy. If I was to ask any of you, who do you think is the more valuable person here to retain? Chances are we would say, of course, Mr. Mayers, he's right on top of things, right? And how about Michelle? Oh, she's probably pretty easily replaceable, you know, she's so down in the hierarchy. I want you to now look at a map. This is not a hypothetical example. This is a real example where we mapped the influence and knowledge networks in the firm, and this is what came up. I don't know why the thing is not coming up. Anyway, what the network map which came up, the informal structure, what it showed was that in the network of things, Mr. Mez was actually on the outside of the network, and Michelle was very deeply embedded right in the center of the networks. When they embedded who's connected to who, who's talking to who, how many times, what is the value they're bringing to the table. And what we don't understand is that organization maps is just one way of representing the organization. When people who are embedded in the social network of the organization, when they leave, they take more than just their skills with them. They take their networks with them. And it's very, very difficult to quantify that. The third sign is that the incentive mix in the company is primarily financial. If the main way of motivating employees is largely through pay bands, through bonuses, etc., it's time to relook at that. Why is it that Gen Y is perpetually online and the computer? I love my computer because my friends live in it. You know, that's where most of the people are. So what is it that will motivate such an individual? Certainly not blocking social media at work. That's not the way to go. If the talent pipeline is leaking due to women leaving mid-career, you need to be thinking more in terms of flexible work arrangements, as well as looking at non-linear careers. I'm sorry, I really hold this against corporate India, that most companies don't understand that there is an opportunity and possibility for moving up the corporate lattice, not just the corporate ladder. Steve Jobs, right? He's our favorite leader to quote at HR organization, conferences. We all know he spent 2 years in India sitting at an ashram. If he came back and applied to your firm today, what's the first thing you say? He's got a 2-year break on his resume. He can't explain it. Where am I going to band him? How are we going to classify him? Probably fall right into the reject pile, no matter how good Steve Jobs was. But that's precisely what we do when we have a lot of women who come back after a career break, because they've been taking care of their families, they've been taking care of their children, they've been taking care of the household, and somehow that is held against them because they don't fall into what our mental model of a career path looks like. So what should we be doing? Marcus Buckingham, in his famous book First Break All the Rules, said, a company's search for value and an individual's search for identity are going to coincide and be the key force for change. So the value that the company is trying to create and the meaning that the individual is searching for, if you can somehow get that together, is when you can really design a very powerful system of incentives. So you say, okay, this is excellent, we get all this, now where do we begin? So this is where the rubber meets the road. I want to share with you some things that you can try out on your own as you decide to innovate. First thing is, you should think globally and act locally. There are organizations all over the world who are making great strides in innovative practices, and there's no harm in borrowing from them. For example, in France, employees who have worked for a minimum of 24 months in a company can leave for 12 months unpaid to start or acquire their business. At the end of the leave, the employee is entitled to return to his former position for a similar or equivalent salary. And I'm quoting to you from today's newspaper in Business Standard. Now new hires have 1 foot outside the door, and one of the people says, one of the Gen Y employees say, I want to learn the ropes in e-commerce in one company, validate my learnings in another company, and finally start my own business. Right? So if that is what he wants to do, why not provide an opportunity like this, or better still, encourage the entrepreneurial spirit in your own company in the form of incubation and new ideas and new products. Because as it says here, for organizations that have an overall attrition of 12 to 15%, the Gen Y attrition is often as high as 25 to 40%. Ladies and gentlemen, as HR professionals, can we really afford to lose so many people after we have trained them? Second is a heightened state of awareness. If you were to do a quick survey in your firm and you ask your boss or your leaders, do you think you're innovative? Chances are they'll say yes. So Mercer did a study and they asked the leaders, how innovative do you think you are? And then they asked their subordinates, how innovative do you think your boss is? This is what we found out. On inspiring curiosity, challenging current perspectives, creating freedom, driving discipline, the leaders all were somewhere thinking, 70% of them said, yes, we are innovative. When you talk to the subordinates and the employees, they barely struggled to meet the 40-41% mark. We're talking of more than a 30% gap in reality. So if you are wanting to be innovative, be self-aware of what your company is doing. The innovation matrix is very, very important. On one hand, we have the innovation competence. Do you have the competence or not? But on the x-axis, more importantly, we are talking about innovation commitment. May I see by a show of hands, how many people here want to be innovative in their talent management? Can you raise your hands? Yes? Most? All? Some? Not decided? Okay. Innovation, everybody wants to be innovative. Everybody wants to be at the cutting edge of things. They want to be the next generation. But here's what you have to understand. Cutting edge of innovation is also the bleeding edge of innovation. When you decide to go in that direction, you must have a certain level of commitment, and it has to be matched with certain level of competence before you can achieve success in that journey. So as you can see, the different things that will happen if you are mismatched on your commitment as well as competence. Checklist, make sure that whatever you're planning to implement is sustainable, not just something that caters to a Gen Y or a Gen X, but think about the future of the company, where it is going to be in the next few years. It's scalable, it can reach more and more people. It's agile, which means it has to be flexible. And is your system ready for it? Not every company is ready for every sort of innovation. And it is not a good idea to just adopt a practice because your competitors are doing it. You must look within and see if your company is ready for something or not. So 3 final rules before I sign off. Rule number 1, remember, innovation without execution is meaningless. And execution without diffusion makes no sense. No point in having a great idea if you cannot execute it. No point in executing it if you can't take it everywhere in your company. Rule number 2 is actually the 3 golden rules of failure. Fail early. The earlier you fail, the better it is, before you invest all that money and time and energy and find you fail. So fail early, fail often. The more often you fail, the more you're learning, and fail forward. What do I mean by failing forward? If you fail and you learn something, then you have failed forward rather than failing backward. When you're trying innovation, don't just think of ROI, return on investment. Also think of ROE, return on experience, right? And remember rule number 3, when we invest in people, results take time. Meanwhile, the absence of evidence must not be mistaken for evidence of absence. We are talking about human beings here, not some genetically modified crop. So therefore, in conclusion, when you're thinking about innovation and talent management, don't limit your challenges, ladies and gentlemen. Challenge your limits. Thank you very much.
I'll be particularly interested in knowing how you can quantify skill set management to arrive at or find out solutions for talent. By skill set management, I mean what attributes you propose or you can recommend to capture, maybe in a IT environment or maybe in a general environment, which can help you to identify talent, manage performance, or get performance management systems.
That's a very relevant question, and one will have to have a full session to answer that. And please, feel free to jump in based on your experiences at HP. But I would like to provide only 2 guidelines because it's difficult to get into a competency framework of any sort. But in identifying talent for the future, there are at least 2 things that I always recommend. First thing is you must look at the attitude of the employee, because if there is somebody who has the right attitude, they can be trained on many things. But if they have the wrong attitude, no matter how good your training program is, no matter what skills you offer to them, they will all come crashing down because the person has the wrong attitude. The second thing that I think is very important in managing talent is to look at people who have the ability to unlearn, not just learn, but unlearn. Because the environment is changing so quickly that even if I gave you the top 10 competencies that are needed today, they may not necessarily be the top 10 competencies needed tomorrow. So again, focusing in looking beyond just what is the skills on the resume to looking at what is the attitude, what is the ability of the person to move forward is really important. And To give a concrete example, one of the things that our organizations struggle with, because Gen Y people in particular, they switch jobs so often, they move from one organization to the other. In 8 months' time, they want to find a new company, and you get these resumes where people have had these multiple experiences, short experiences. One of the things I ask people to look out for is, has this person, because they have three different jobs, have they had the same experience 3 times? Or have they had 3 different experiences? Because what you're really looking for is the ability of the person to have learned from the 3 different experiences that they have had. I don't think that's the perfect answer to your question, but I do think that those are some of the things that I recommend to look for.
Very good afternoon. I'm Unnikrishnan. I'm heading the sales training department in Popular Vehicles and Services. It's a service industry. So this topic is very interesting. You presented it very well. So, now first of all, let us understand, because now almost all the service industry, while promoting, so we need to look at this physical performance and the experience. So we need to create a talent pool, and by which we can even develop a succession line for these second line management. Can you just advise on what are the criteria by which we have to create a talent pool? Because we have to see the differential competency of these persons, irrespective of the background and the education or the experience. So I would like to know this. I think it's very relevant to all the HR managers sitting over here. So what are the criteria by which you can even create a talent pool in the organization?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Please.
Creating the second generation of talent management, I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to start addressing the talent pool even before it comes into your company. You have to start investing in campuses. You have to start investing in reaching out to your ideal employees, no matter where they may be in different companies that you may want to get hold of them. So I think the principle that I would advise is to make sure that the net that you are casting for creating the next generation of talent is not restricted to the traditional methods of recruitment, but is looking at the larger talent pool that is available, whether it is in other companies or other campuses, etc. And one of the ways to do it, which I think HR is not doing right now, is to create a brand of HR in the larger market such that you start becoming the employer of choice. Right now I find a lot of organizations are not, the HR brand is not really being managed in the market. When you go to a campus and you have 5 companies who come and talk to you, and they're all offering the same compensation, and they're all offering the same opportunities, and they're all offering you the world, how are you going to distinguish yourself to make sure that the perfect employee comes to you? So you need to become a magnet for talent attraction by managing the brand of HR in the larger organization.
Question is to Tanvi. Throughout your presentation, you were talking about innovation in HR. I think being an HR professional, we should all encourage innovation across the value chain.
I agree, everybody in the organization is a talent, but your tools for discerning between talent has got to be very, very good. A lot of people say, a lot of organizations say, people are our best resources. You've heard all that, right? Everybody says people are our best resources. I don't agree. Good people are your best resources. So you have to have that tool and the ability to distinguish between who are the people you truly want to hold on to. In Anderson, when we used to have the appraisal, and all HR professionals know what happens when compensation is going on, they want to put on the bell curve, they want to put everybody in different bands. And everybody would come recommended from their managers as A plus employee, everyone. And the managing partner used to come and he used to just blast everybody in the room and say, if all we have is A plus talent, why am I not seeing a turnover of 900 crores every month? So go back to the drawing board and learn how to differentiate between people and good people. Thank you very much.